And welcome back. We are in November now, and we're going to be putting this out there right before Thanksgiving comes up. Hope you are all going to have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving this year, that it'll be better than last year. Certainly seems like it should be in most places. I am a little under the weather. I apologize in advance if I cough. You've all had me... You've heard me cough recently, too. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing okay over here. It's kind of a toasty day. I saw Licorice Pizza last night.
How is it?
I think it's another one of those missives that he does to a time gone by here in Los Angeles. Interesting for fellows like you and me. Yeah, I mean, you've been here your entire life, so when you sit down to see it, you will see this L.A. from 1973, this actual physical L.A. from 1973. It's just a fascinating thing. When I first got here in 1990, the 1990 L.A. and the 1970s L.A. were more or less the same L.A. L.A. did not begin to sort of really actually physically change until the 2000s, middle 2000s, when various sort of iconic things literally started to go away. So I got to experience that LA, and watching, one of his films will just always sort of like put you there, as he tells a little story that's really just a bunch of, stories. He's just telling these stories from his childhood, and Gary Goatsman as a character, and a sort of William Holden guy as a charector. And I guess if you grew up here in LA, you have stories like this. I think about that, and I'm like, Wade could make this movie.
They all feel like yesterday, and I know they weren't.
It's funny, we were just talking about it, right? An interesting kind of thing. You know what we forgot to do? We forgot to look up who died.
You know what? I looked a little bit up of it. First, I want to make mention that just about a week ago, Walter Mirisch turned 100 years old.
Yeah, let's start with that.
I know a lot of people may not realize Walter Mirisch even still exists, but Walter Mirisch, it's interesting, with West Side Story, the Spielberg film coming out, Walter Mirisch's company produced the original West Side Story in 1961. So 60 years ago, he was a 40-year-old man, and he and his brothers produced West Side Story. And of course, there would, Mirisch Company would do things like Some Like It Hot and The Apartment and all those great Billy Wilder movies, all of the Pink Panther movies. The Mirisch Company was the original independent producer, independent production company. They started that for everybody.
Yeah.
And prior to that, everything was done inside the studios. The Mirisches were the first ones to whom studios farmed things out. Okay, we'll give you a little bit of money and you develop things. We're not going to develop inside. We're going to let the Mirisch Company do it. And now that's the model. They were the first. So Walter Mirisch, 100 years old, still going strong, still wants to win another Oscar. And our good friend Brandt, who wrote and directed our short Refugee, Oscar shortlisted last year, Brandt was on the Universal lot one time, probably about 3-4 years ago, and bumped into this old guy in the elevator going up in the Black Tower where all the executive offices are, and found out it was Walter Mirisch. Every day he puts on a tie and a suit and goes to the office at 100 years old. That is an example to me. I'm going to be doing
that's why he's 100 years old. Because he's always got something to do tomorrow. He never goes to sleep without anything to do tomorrow. He knows exactly what he's going to do. He's got to figure out what suit and tie to wear at number one, and then he's got to get his ass to the office. That'll keep you alive for 100 years, apparently.
But in terms of people who died, Dean Stockwell, lost Dean Stockwell.
I mean, Dean Stockwell was an actor for longer than most people actually live, because he started when he was a little bitty boy, and he stayed an actor through every phase, a successful actor through every phase of his life. A lot of times we talk about, child actors and what will happen to them and all that kind of stuff. Well, for Dean Stockwell, he stayed an actor is what he did.
He did.
My Dean Stockwell is the Dean Stockwell of Quantum Leap, him and Scott Bakula. Him popping in. I love that. I'm a big ridiculous fan of that show. My wife is in an episode of that show. I always just love the show. In general, I love the characters, in that show. And I love the way Dean played all that stuff. He was just amazing, but Dean was in night galleries and
Blue Velvet, his whole serenade in Blue Velvet is just is legendary, you know? Yeah. I mean, an amazing actor who survived through many different generations of changes in acting style and movie styles. And he somehow belongs to all those eras in a very unique way. Not often known. Dean Stockwell won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival, twice. And only just a few years apart, back in it was like late 50s and then 1962 again for Long Day's Journey into Night. Only two other actors have ever won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival twice. Jack Lemmon and Marcello Mastroianni. Wow. And the third is Dean Stockwell. That's pretty great.
That is insane company. I did not know that. And that's just insane company. That's amazing. Dean always popped up. He would just pop up in some of my favorite shows. You know, Dean is in a couple episodes of Stargate. Dean is in a few. I mean, he's just there. He would be. You know, sort of being Dean Stockwell. Miss him. So good one. Good one.
Wow. Yeah. And we also lost a film critic colleague, David Chute, Chute. If you want to look up some of his writings, David Chute is an extraordinary figure in film history. He was diagnosed with esophageal cancer just a few weeks ago, and it took him rather quickly, and it's devastating to a lot of us who are close to him. David he's the OG when it comes to Americans who championed Hong Kong cinema. You know, I'd always loved kung fu movies growing up, but it wasn't until, you know, David Chute introduced Andy Klein to those movies, taking him to San Gabriel and the Chinatown theaters and showed him, you know, the breadth of what those movies were and could be. And you know, his writing opened it up to me as well. And then Andy Klein introduced me to David, and David was invaluable to me when I was writing my Jackie Chan book. And a lot of people don't realize David Chute basically is responsible for John Woo having an American career. And, you know, he's sort of where it all came together as far as opening up what I call our muddy Western eyes to the spectacular stuff that was going on in Hong Kong throughout the 80s and 90s in particular. So, David Chute, is gone, and we will miss him terribly, but what an amazing legacy he leaves of film criticism, which made a difference. And that's something to say. He didn't just write reviews. He made a difference with his criticism. He bridged cultural divide. Yeah. And he did that as well later in his career with Bollywood movies. You know, when he was done with Hong Kong, he went and tackled Indian cinema, which is like the heaviest lift of all, and did an amazing job with it. So, David Chute, a really legendary epic film critic, and I'm so sorry he's gone, but what a legacy he leaves.
He's a big fan of Ramiro and John Waters and anything off the beaten path. I didn't know him, but I read him, and he wrote for Boston, Phoenix, film comment, a bunch of stuff. Yeah. There you go.
Film comment, yeah. Well, let's get bouncing. I've got some docs here. I'm going to pop through some docs real quickly. We've got first. Let me do this one here. The Hidden Life of Trees, which is based on a book, actually. And I was not familiar with the book, but I grew up with a book in the house called The Secret Life of Plants, which I remember my mother was really excited about, where the whole premise was that they did these studies and can plants hear us and react to us? Do plants have emotions? I thought that's weird, man. You know, what are you up to, Mom? And sure enough, it was very, very interesting, the stuff. And this is kind of along the same lines. Peter Wohlleben is the guy who sort of underlines all of this world, these theories, and it gives a completely different perspective on environmentalism and trees and vegetation and ecology, and it's really, really interesting. It's an interesting perspective. You may not completely embrace it. You might think some of it is a little bit out on the edge, but boy, it's really, really interesting to kind of start to understand forests and wooded areas as more than just an ecosystem, but a social system. So I really very fascinating, and I'm curious to read the book now. So that's The Hidden Life of Trees. And then we have got Thank You for Supporting the Arts, which is really quite an interesting and unusual film. This is from Cinema Libre Studios, which does very socially conscious stuff. Gus Van Sant shows up in this, by the way. And the oh God, I don't even quite know how to frame this. It's a look at people who let's put it this way. It does for the arts, maybe in the same way what the previous film did with respect to trees and so forth. It's a different way of looking at the arts. It's a different way of, especially things like stripping. I don't want to kind of give everything away, but here's the thing. Anything can be an art if it is in the hands of an artist. Anything can, if it's not in the hands of an artist, it will not be art. No. So the question here is, this woman who is a stripper, is it a sex thing? Is it a feminist thing? Is it an art thing? And that's the question that is sort of posed here. And Gus Van Sant weighs in, and a lot of other people weigh in. Yeah, they should have asked me. I would have weighed in. And it takes it beyond. I don't want people to think it's just about stripping, because it takes it beyond stripping. It takes it to a question of, what are the arts? What makes something an art? What makes someone an artist? It gets rather profound. So that's as much as I'll give away. And then we have a great one here from First Run Features, Gustav Stickley, American Craftsman. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, Stickley is one of the sort of key figures in the American Craftsman, kind of really kind of an amazing artist in and of his own right. Very particular kind of design and furniture and decoration and so forth. So I watch a lot of Antiques Roadshow. Let me tell you something. Whenever somebody has some Stickley, the number, that's right. The quote is going to be way up there. So it's beautiful. Yeah. And he does a lot. Like I always knew him just as kind of basically a furniture guy, but he's more than a furniture guy. He's more than than the guy who makes, particular furniture. He's, it's a complete aesthetic. And that's what this gets into. He's a really significant figure and much more influential than I think I ever actually gave him credit for. And there's a lot. This is only about a 67-minute doc. There's a lot packed into it. Really, really very interesting. And quite the businessman, too, I should point out. L.A. Plays Itself. Famous film. This has been around for quite a while. It was previously on Blu-ray. Then the rights were withdrawn, and it is back again. And what an amazing kind of experimental but wonderful tribute to Los Angeles. And it is here included. It's a 4K restoration, and it is part of a larger thing on this one Blu-ray called the Fred Halstead Collection, which includes the hour-long film Sex Tool, which is longer than L.A. Plays Itself, by the way. It's just not as famous. And The Sex Garage, which is a half-hour film, and 4K restorations of L.A. Plays Itself and Sex Tool, and 2K restoration of The Sex Garage. And, it's all very, very interesting. Fred Halstead is a fine filmmaker, and that's worth paying attention to. Oh, yeah. We also have from Film Movement, Robert Muggey, another great documentarian, Robert Muggey, Deep Blues, which is just a fantastic documentary about the blues. This was commissioned by Dave Stewart, believe it or not. We think of the Eurythmics as kind of an 80s band, but the Eurythmics, there's a lot of blues going on there. And Dave Stewart is, Annie's vocals and Dave Stewart's guitar. It's very bluesy. And so it was Dave Stewart who commissioned it and sent Robert Muggey down into the northern part of Mississippi and the Delta to kind of find what's happening with the blues today. Where's the soul of the blues? And it's pretty great. They find just some amazing artists and incredible musicians who are probably never going to otherwise be on your radar. This may be the only time that you see them. And these are just incredible, incredible people, and some great music here. If you love the blues, boy, this is going to cut you right to the heart. From the blues to the Bee Gees. Oh my God, I love the Bee Gees. Frank Marshall Frank Marshall did an HBO original, The Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, which came out this year. This is on Blu-ray. I am so grateful for this because I have been a Bee Gees fan since I was a kid on the school bus, listening to every song from the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. And, you know, there's only, Barry's the only one left.
Yeah. See, I'm a little bit older than you, so I actually remember the Bee Gees the first time.
That's right, before Saturday Night Fever.
They were big stars in the late 60s. And then that whole other thing, and wow, yeah.
It's, so Frank Marshall, you know, labor of love. He's mostly doing documentaries these days, but boy, what a great tribute. If, you know, the Bee Gees were kind of a joke for a moment, like everybody else from disco. So this takes that it goes from that early 60s period all the way through, man, all the way through right into the 80s and beyond. And a lot of people interviewed here, some really important people who worked with them and admire them and know them. Eric Clapton, Justin Timberlake, Nick Jonas, you know, they throw the young kids in there who give today's generation permission to realize how great.
Yeah. And you know, look, I like the ones, I like the artists of any given day, but of today who pay homage, who recognize, look, I didn't, you know, I wasn't born anew. I was built from something. And mostly it was my parents' record collection. Is what it was.
That's right. We have an epic documentary here, also from HBO, another HBO original, Tiger. This is over 3 hours on Tiger Woods, and it is riveting. But I will say it is incomplete because the man is still young and still alive.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like the final chapter to this doc hasn't been written. But what is amazing is that to me, that a guy that young and that successful can justify a 3 hour and 15-minute documentary that is never dull and never boring. There has been so much drama in his life, and we think about, you know, the auto accident. And
all that happened since that documentary. You know what I liked about that doc though, because again, you and I are of an age of where we remember. When there was no Tiger Woods, and then suddenly there's a Tiger Woods, and all of that, and all of that is in that film, and that was really, really interesting to watch. Fascinating to sort of walk through that sort of, and then the sort of big dynamic change and all of these things. But you're right, it's a story unfinished that will probably require another 2 or 3 hour documentary. 10 years from now. Yeah.
It's really an unbelievably rich and textured life that he's had. And it's warts and all. It's not like they're building a temple to the guy.
No, yeah.
They lay it out.
Tiger's dad. And again, I remember watching, and his dad would be there, you know, but his dad passed away quite some time ago. But if you go back far enough, I remember that episode of, I don't remember what it is. It was either Mike Douglas or Merv Griffin. And little bitty tiny Tiger, and 1970, whatever it would have been.
Yeah.
I remember watching that episode of that show, and stuff. You know, there's one thing though that bugged me a little bit in that documentary. They never mention the great black golfer Calvin Peete. They sort of frame it as though Tiger was the first black. No, there were actually a number of relatively, but Calvin Peete was the first one, you know, in the television, and they don't mention him anyway. Whatever, that's just a thing.
Yeah. Well, and then we also have last on the docks is Summertime.
Oh, yes.
Which it's funny, Tim, you yourself have directed and produced a spoken word documentary. Yeah. And this reminded me a lot of it, and I don't want to say that yours is better.
That's not. I actually rather enjoyed that film there.
Summertime's very good. It's very good. This is a rather amazing editing job, frankly, that you're able to follow 27 different kind of slam poets over the course of one day, and it does a great job of juggling all these different stories. And putting them all together. It's really quite great. Yeah. It's funny. There's a pull quote on here, a wonderful, wonderful movie from KPCC. I'm like, who are they quoting there? Because, it's not saying Film Week, but I know that was on Film Week. So who was it that said that? I'm trying to figure out which one of our colleagues.
That probably was me.
But it is really, really great. It's a wonderful tapestry and all the different lives and the different ways of doing spoken word. It's pretty great. I like it.
And the thing that I loved about that film, and I'm not kidding, that probably is me. Because I covered that day. And the thing about that film is it travels all over LA. It starts in Venice, it travels all over. And I just love that. And I know that it's technically not a musical, but a lot of times somebody's either rapping or singing and so there's this music or dancing, this beautiful sequence with these girls all dressed in red, and I know all of these places. These are places that we know all of these places. If you and I watch this movie, it's kind of like, and not that you have to compare them, but I far and away like that movie better than, In the Heights, which was a perfectly fine movie, but they're kind of like the same thing. But so one's technically a musical. That stuff is not a musical, but I just love that movie. I deal with it.
Well, there's a wonderful audio commentary on here as well, and a bunch of little featurettes and a kind of a behind the scenes doc, which I think is weird to do a behind the scenes doc on a doc, because docs are kind of their own making of. But whatever, it's fine. But the audio commentary with the director and cast is pretty great, and the director, we should point out, is Carlos Lopez Estrada, who also did Raya and the Last Dragon. So, a lot of diversity in what he does as a filmmaker from, those are not even close to the same genre, documentary and, animated. And then let me blow through some Warner Archive stuff here. Warner Archive just they keep unloading their stuff. It's all on Blu-ray now. We're not doing anything else on DVD, and man, they are just doing some amazing stuff. So it's all over the map, all over the decades, but it's all memorable. Night Shift, for crying out loud.
Oh my God, one of my favorite movies
Ron Howard,
on the planet.
This was Ron Howard when he made light, bouncy, kind of really fun movies. Henry Winkler, Michael Keaton, Shelley Long, a score by Burt Bacharach of all things. This movie is so much fun, and it's just it's like
the Shelley Long.
How do you take prostitution and make it a movie this fun?
With a hitman and at least one death. That early scene in the movie when the guy goes out of the thing, and there's a scene with Shelley Long in that bathroom with Henry Winkler and those panties and those, and it's just, they would not allow you to do this. He has to go upstairs to reach up into the cat. You can't do that anymore. And that is, and it is what is obscene is that you can't do that anymore. I suppose you can. You can do whatever the hell you want. It's America. You know what I mean? But that scene was this absolutely extraordinarily wonderful, uncontroversial scene. And a narrative with pips and hoes and all this, particularly not in a black exploitation film, where the top hose is like this really, Shelley Long was so beautiful. It's insane.
So good.
So, I'm like, this is really sort of really cool stuff. Is it kind of edgy? Well, to be honest, at the time, I certainly didn't think so. What does mean? No. See this movie? It's funny as Michael Keaton movie.
And that's what it was, and that's what it is, and that's what it will forever
but
be.
if you want to call it edgy, I guess you can if you want, but it was hysterically funny and so sweet. So,
dinner at 8. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, end of the show, I'm going to be doing, I'm going to let Tim go, and then I'm going to lay out a bunch of new anime. Okay. We've got a bunch of anime stored up, so I'm going to be hitting the anime at the end of the show. We got Dinner at 8. Dinner at 8 is unbelievably stacked with talent. This is a 1933 George Cukor film that has so much talent, it blows my mind. Unbelievable. Yeah. They take a George S. Kaufman and Edna Ferber stage play, which is already elite right there. You put it in the hands of George Cukor directing, David O. Selznick producing. You have a screenplay co-written by Francis Marion and Herman Mankiewicz, the Mank of the recent film Mank, who would go on to do to co-write Citizen Kane, with additional dialogue by Donald Ogden Stewart. And then who are we going to put in this thing? Just John Barrymore and Lionel Barrymore and Jean Harlow and Jean Herschel. Wallace Beery. Billy Burke. Yeah. It's like, holy cow! How much classic Hollywood talent can you jam into a single movie? It's incredible. It's so much fun. It's just really, really great. All takes place, at a very elite kind of party in New York. And, it's a wonderful artifact of an amazing period in time. And it's one of George Cukor's very, very best and most legendary films. Children of the Damned.
Oh, yeah.
Real creepy. Just real creepy film, still super creepy. They've tried to remake this and not very well. This is from 1963, very much a Cold War post-nuclear, cautionary tale in the kind of pseudo-exploitation vein of, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. All kids from all around the world, all living in England, and they all have weird psychic powers and high IQs. And where did they come from? Man, is this weird. And just gives me chills to this day, but, it's still a great film. And, I highly recommend it, especially at Halloween time, because boy, it's going to scare the daylights out of you. Let me pull a couple of these here. These are, some older, let's see. Yeah, I'll just do these two first. Mary Stevens, MD, is an old Vitaphone Warner Brothers film with Thelma Todd and Kay Francis. It's fine. It's sort of classic melodrama of the period, directed by Lloyd Bacon, who did a lot of the early Busby Berkeley films. Kind of one of their more reliable directors of the 1930s. This is 1933, probably one of like 5 films that Lloyd Bacon directed that year. In any case, Thelma Todd, really significant figure because Thelma Todd died young. She was murdered, in a location that I drive by every day. It's about, 2 miles from my house. It's right on Pacific Coast Highway. It was a restaurant, that was hers. It was known as Thelma Todd's. They did a Lonnie Anderson TV movie about the whole thing. Lonnie Anderson played Thelma Todd, way too old to be playing her, but, it's still there. And the building is still there. It's protected, and you can go and see the stairs right behind it where Thelma Todd was found dead. The whole thing is creepy. So it's always important to see a Thelma Todd movie and to remember the history that goes behind it. Anyway, based on a novel by Virginia Kellogg, directed by Lloyd Bacon. There it is. Mary Stevens, MD. Basically, it's a Kay Francis movie, but Thelma Todd is a significant figure in it. Mad Love with Peter Lorre. This was an MGM film that was totally unlike any other MGM films of the period. This is 1935. Based on a creepy novel that I will never read, directed by Karl Freund. So it's got a lot of German expressionism going on in it. But this is the first English language film that Peter Lorre made. He'd come from Germany and making things like M. And this is he plays an evil plastic surgeon. Just saying, before there was Nip Tuck, there was this. You're basically watching this to watch Peter Lorre just do what he does best. He's got a shape.
Oh yeah, those really people have seen those sort of stark black and white with that high peeling off the top of that head there. Yeah.
So let me see here. Let's do a couple of horse things here. I'm trying to get through this a little quicker. The Naked Spur with James Stewart and Janet Leigh, also starring Robert Ryan. This is just a good James Stewart Western from the 1950s. They're making these things left and right. See it for the, see it because it's Anthony Mann directing Jim Stewart in a Western. I don't know what else to tell you.
It's fine as hell.
And Janet, it's good. It's a good solid Western, and it's very nicely transferred. We also have a young, talking earlier about child stars and being able to make the migration when we're talking, Elizabeth Taylor in National Velvet, also along with Mickey Rooney, both of them, child stars that made good. And Mickey Rooney was already on his way from being a younger star and all the stuff with Judy Garland to maturing into adult roles. This is Elizabeth Taylor as a young girl, and she's getting ready to make the move into adult roles as well. And look, it's Elizabeth Taylor and a horse. I'm sorry. It's great melodrama, really fun. 1944, and it's just a classic film, National Velvet. Marx Brothers in A Night at the Opera, one of my all-time favorites. When Harpo bats that baseball with the violin, it's one of the funniest laughs I've ever seen in a movie. Love this thing. It's classic Marx Brothers, directed by Sam Wood. Brilliant. Commentary by our good friend Leonard Maltin, which is wonderful. Leonard just absolutely slays it. It tells stuff that I didn't even know. It's amazing. There's a documentary, Remarks on Marx. There's some stuff from television with Groucho and vintage shorts, and it's just really, really great. I especially like Sunday Night at the Trocadero and Robert Benchley's Academy Award-winning How to Sleep. Those are great, great shorts. You got Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland and Santa Fe Trail. Oh, yeah. Again, this is, directed by Michael Curtiz. It's just, this is the star power here. It's just pure classic Hollywood star power from 1940. Great film, classic Errol Flynn picture. It's, I don't know what else to tell you about it. I mean, it's, it's a George Custer thing. Yeah. And who plays Custer? Ronald Reagan. There you go. Ronald Reagan plays Custer. There's some novel stuff in that. Eye of the Devil, I had never actually seen before. Eye of the Devil is one of those creepy chillers from the late 1960s where they were trying to make things at the studio level that were a little bit exploitation.
Yeah, but of course, Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate is in this. Deborah Carr, Donald Pleasance, David Niven, David Hemmings. It's a great cast. It's based on a novel called Day of the Arrow by Philip Lorraine. And it was directed by J. Lee Thompson. And so it's got real credentials, and yet it feels kind of really low budget, creepy, gothic horror-y. And the whole thing takes place around this French chateau and these vineyards, and there are occult happenings going on, that, as they always do whenever you get into these very sophisticated, like Get Out was kind of riffing on this to a significant degree. There's a lot of Eye of the Devil and Get Out. There's a lot of Wicker Man kind of split between them. Anytime you get to a place where everyone, you could even say, what was the follow up to Shaun of the Dead? The one with where they go into the countryside and everybody's got guns. Oh yeah.
What was that? Was that the end? I can't.
I can't. Not the end, but yeah. Oh gosh, it's one where he's always talking about bad boys. Title is escaping. I'm sure our listeners are losing their minds right now. But anyway, it's kind of a similar thing where you go to Hot Fuzz.
Oh, Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz. Where you go into a place where everything is supposed to be right and it's utterly wrong. Rosemary's Baby.
Wicker Man. Anytime there's going to be there's a pagan, what's his name does those movies now?
More recently, or something like that. I was going to Midsommar is like that too. It's like, oh, what a lovely place. No, not really. Give it time. Give it time. We've got Richard Dix. We got a double feature here of Val Lewton films. Richard Dix in The Ghost Ship and Boris Karloff in Bedlam. Excuse me. Again, neither of these are all that great, but if you're a fan of Val Lewton, you'll thoroughly enjoy it. Val Lewton, of course, produced these, both of them directed by Mark Robson. They are Val Lewton. I mean, but again, Mark Robson is just kind of on board as the director in name. Val Lewton, like David Selznick, very much a producer who imposed his sensibilities on things. So Val Lewton, kind of an epic classic genre. Cat People, great genre person. So a couple of kind of underrated Val Lewton pictures, The Ghost Ship and Bedlam. Not terrible, but not great either. Dustin Hoffman, Straight Time.
Oh yeah, his thing.
One of his tougher, better, grittier performances from like 1978, I think this was. He's kind of going back to Ratso Rizzo a little bit in this, but it's a really good, tough, gritty film, gritty character. Young Teresa Russell looks amazing in this. Gary Busey, Gary Busey, Harry Dean Stanton.
It was meant to be. Dustin's, and is the only film that he ever directed. But Uli Grossbard came in and
Dustin was supposed to direct.
Dustin did direct this mostly. Because Dustin fired himself. He quit. He couldn't do it. So it was this moment when I think Jack Nicholson had made a film. Jack Nicholson only ended up directing two, but Dustin started out as director on this film, and realized that he was no director, and he never directed again.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you.
Actually, he did direct. He did direct something a few years ago, didn't he? If I'm not mistaken. But
oh yeah, he may have. Maybe
just like in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and so it was this and that.
I'm sure all of that is on the commentary. There's a commentary here with Hoffman and Grossbard that I did not have a chance to listen to, but I'm sure that is all recounted there.
Yeah, Quartet back in 2012. Yeah,
that's right. I remember that.
And this in '78. Yeah, interesting.
We've got more fantastic Droopy and other Tex Avery shorts on Tex Avery Screwball Classics Volume 3. Just keeps getting better and better and better. There are just, I mean, I wish they had released all these things at the same time. But Deputy Droopy, I'm so thrilled to finally have that on Blu-ray. And Deputy Droopy is just one of the funniest bits of animation ever created. That is here on Volume 3. Just a few others here to pound through. The legendary The Last of Sheila. This is worth mentioning again with West Side Story coming out.
Yeah.
Why? Because this screenplay is the only screenplay ever written or co-written by Stephen Sondheim.
Oh.
This is a fantastic kind of crazy whodunit thriller that just is one of the great screenplays of all time. It's a little bit dated. It was made in the early 70s, 73. So the clothes, the sound, the look, the film stock, it all looks really dated.
But Richard Benjamin at the height of his,
I know. What a great script written by Stephen Sondheim and Anthony Perkins.
Of all people, yeah.
Like that's, and I mean, if you think about great screenplays, I'm not necessarily putting those two together on it. But what fascinating, produced and directed by Herbert Ross, normally a musical guy, of course, funny Lady and Footloose and stuff like that. But, theme song sung by Bette Midler and a cast that includes Richard Benjamin, Diane Cannon, James Mason, Raquel Welch, Ian McShane.
Really young.
James Coburn.
And he's so young.
So phenomenal. I mean, a great cast, really, really terrific. So, before you get too hung up on some of these new whodunits and the new thrillers, they're all kind of trying to emulate this. It's very, very Agatha Christie-ish, but I'd almost say even better. Yeah. So The Last of Sheila, man, it's a really terrific movie.
Love that movie.
We've got Sylvia Sidney and Spencer Tracy in Fury, co-starring Walter Brennan. I can't ever say Walter Brennan's name without thinking of the guy in Good Morning Vietnam and laughing about it. But this is a pretty great American film by Fritz Lang. I still think Fritz Lang did better German films than American films. But, a lot of great power here. Fritz Lang co-wrote it with Bartlett Cormack, produced by Joe Mankiewicz, the other Mankiewicz. And it's a pretty good, tough, hard-boiled American kind of pseudo-noir. It has a lot to say about the justice system and, which was, already really being challenged at the time and how it was, not dispensing justice necessarily impartially. The whole concept of mob justice, very, very much a part of this. Great commentary by Peter Bogdanovich, who gives you all the backstory on this. It's a really, really, amazing historical context to this. Yeah. So, it's a good, solid film. Again, not, as, in terms of directing, I think Fritz Lang's kind of a hired hand here. But Spencer Tracy's terrific, and it's all
it's kind of a little bit more gangster than noir, but still it has that look.
More gang. That's it. It's more gangstery than it's kind of like between the two genres a little bit. Then we've got Some Came Running with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Shirley MacLaine. Love this movie. So much fun. Directed by Vincent Minnelli in his prime, late 1950s, and this is just absolutely terrific. It's a melodrama. But it's just, it has that like late 50s kind of Douglas Sirkian melodrama feel to it without being syrupy. Vincent Minnelli always brought kind of a shiny disposition to a lot of these things. There's always a sunny side to the things. Based on a James Jones novel, James Jones, who of course wrote Thin Red Line and From Here to Eternity, and it has certainly his larger than life sensibility to it. I think Shirley MacLaine playing this vulnerable young girl as she did, it was just absolutely wonderful. I love it. It's a really, really great melodrama from the period.
Oh my God, yeah.
Last two here. Barbara Stanwyck in Ladies They Talk About. Not exactly one of her more famous parts. This is 1933 pre-code, just barely pre-code. And this is also kind of a prison melodrama of sorts, I guess, maybe the way to put it. But it's all about, bad girls and bad men and being able to redeem yourself when society and prison deal you a bad card. But it's like a step above the Poverty Row films and the usual crime films of the era. And Stanwyck is very, very good. And then lastly, The Window, which was an RKO film from 1949. When RKO was really kind of trying to establish its style and its brand, and how are we different from Warner Brothers? How are we different from MGM? How are we different from Columbia? And I'm not quite sure that this really does it. It still feels, now that it's part of the Warner library, it still feels almost more like a Warner Brothers film. But when you look at it, you're like, well, okay, RKO had a slightly different take on noir. It's a little bit more humanistic. There's a kid angle here. It's a little bit more sort of, it's basically about this kid. It's the boy that cried wolf, kind of taken to a noir level. And the fact that it's all being kind of filtered through the eyes of this boy who claims that he saw murder that nobody believes, that actually kind of, it softens it and gives it a little bit more of a humanistic element to it.
Barbara Hale, of course, before
Barbara Hale, Bobby Driscoll.
Perry Mason, before Perry Mason.
Yes. So The Window, very interesting kind of RKO take on noir at the time. All right, there we go. Tim, where should we go?
I'm going to cheat and pop over to the 4Ks.
Do it.
So Final Fantasy.
Oh my gosh.
Man, 2020 years, Final Fantasy. I imagine there has to be some interesting stuff on that.
Yeah. Two commentaries, outtakes, matte art explorations, an interactive documentary, and digital movie code for movies anywhere.
Baldwin, one of the voices there, of course, Steve Buscemi. Interesting, man. I don't know. Final Fantasy at the time took a kind of a beating, critically speaking, but over the years, it seems to have become, a sort of anime of some repute. I mean, or am I reading that wrong?
I don't get it. I really don't. I mean, watch this for just a little bit, just to kind of get a sense of the HDR on it, which looks, I don't know if it looks great or not. I mean, it's because it's so photorealistic. It's tough to sort of, it doesn't, like what would this look like if it were live action? And I don't know. So, I mean, it just, photorealism makes it hard to judge versus actual photography versus actual CG. It kind of tries to split the difference between the two to such a degree that I'm kind of lost as to what the whole deal is. But anyway, clearly this thing has a massive following.
Yeah. For a moment, that was the thing. The Suicide Squad, Suicide Squad, right? Yeah, what a mess.
Yeah.
Look, James Gunn out of St. Louis, so one of my people. But that movie I'm sorry, was just all over the place, and MacGuffins galore. But somehow the point of the movie became the MacGuffins. So anyway, but what did you think?
I hated the first one. I don't know that people keep saying like, well, wait and see the David Ayer cut. The David Ayer cut will show up one day. It's like, oh, okay, maybe it will, but I still don't think I like the characters. I don't like the premise.
No, I don't like the characters.
I'm more convinced than ever that the problem here is the premise, because, they've swapped a lot of characters out and brought some new characters in. Will Smith isn't here anymore. But they brought John Cena and Idris Elba in playing new characters, and it's just like, okay, yeah, we still have Harley Quinn. She's back and she steals the movie. She's got an amazing, the best part of the movie is this like insane scene where she just rips through people like a knife through cheese. But, look, they've also added King Shark. Well, King Shark here, that's where he gives it away. James Gunn is basically just substituting DC characters for the Guardians of the Galaxy. King Shark is basically Groot.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have Groot. Okay, I'm going to use King Shark, but my King Shark is the King Shark from the Flash TV show, which is huge and menacing and muscle bound. And here he's just a big oaf that like
and a MacGuffin, as is Pete Davidson's character, as is Michael Rooker's character. You know, they're just these. You know, and I'm like, really, is that what we're actually doing? You know, so
lots of look. Does it look great? I guess. I mean, it's got a lot of CG. I don't think the 4K necessarily serves the CG very well, to be honest. I think it kind of exposes it in a bad way. I had a harder time sort of seeing the seams when I saw it projected. So in this case, maybe I sat too close to the TV anyway. Gag reel, deleted scenes, extended scenes, all kinds of featurettes on here. Behind the scenes stuff, and a director's commentary, which I did not listen to, none of which will be interesting unless you like the movie, which I don't. The Hills Have Eyes, from Arrow, the old Wes Craven classic. So, I gotta tell you, I was thinking, the original Hills Have Eyes. Michael Berryman and his freaking crazy weird head. The original, Cannibal Hillbilly capturing the motorists movie. So look, here's the thing. Tons of extras I can't even get into. It's like there's a commentary with Wes Craven and Peter Locke. I couldn't even listen to it. Another one with Michael Coven. Didn't have time to listen to it. Gobs of interviews. I watched a couple of them. The one with composer Don Peake is really interesting, to be honest. Like, really fascinating about the score. There's an alternate ending. There's there's so much stuff on here. A 40-page booklet, everything that you ever want to know, and a lot of stuff that you didn't about The Hills Have Eyes. But here's the thing. My big question was, this was a low-budget Wes Craven exploitation horror film at the time. How is this? I mean, does this film that was shot in like a minute and a half on, 35 millimeter film, how is this going to look in a 4K deluxe transfer with HDR? Is it going to show me all the flaws? No way, man. I'll tell you, this film looks better than ever. They don't make it look too pretty. They let it still be gritty, but I felt like I was watching it projected.
That's fantastic.
It's really good. Candyman, the new Candyman. Jordan Peele produced Candyman. Did this need to happen?
Well, no, not so far as I was concerned. And while I understand how they wanted to sort of reset it, not physically, it's still in Chicago, but want to reset it culturally, because there's a whole bunch of stuff in this movie about gentrification. All of that was a little too obvious for me. And I gotta tell you, the thing about the first Candyman movie, the wonderful Tony Todd, of course. I remember I did the junket for that film and interviewed him. And it was kind of an interesting sort of adaptation of all that. Bernard Rose adapting all of that. And, like all of that, all of that thing into the mirror, say the name, this minute. Bernard Rose came up with all of that. That was not in the book. That's that's an adaptation of a Clive Barker.
Interesting
thing, and that
was all Bernard Rose.
That was all Bernard Rose stuff. The other film, Candyman, wasn't black. It was all in London, of course, because Clive. And all that kind of stuff. So all of that sort of urban myth stuff is actually the creation of Bernard Rose in the middle '90s.
Wow. And I had no idea.
So, it's so solid. It's a sort of interesting sort of thing, but all of that is more interesting to me than the sort of new story imposed in this film that really has to do with gentrification and whatever. I could live without that. The horror for the horror's sake is my favorite kind of horror. Horror that happens to have interwoven within it some sort of notion about whatever relevant thing is fine, but it really needs to hide that stuff from me. If I can see it, I don't like it. The new Halloween film does that. It wants to make some sort of commentary about the reason for Michael Myers and blah 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 blah. I'm like, no. That's bullshit. Michael Myers is just a fucking supernatural fucker who's been, on a killing spree for 40 years. That's all it is. And that's all it needs to be. And I would prefer Candyman, just Candyman. That's all you say is you say the name, he comes out, he kills everybody. That's it.
So I'm a big fan of Henry Golding. I love Henry Golding. I think Henry Golding is mad talented. When he kind of burst on the scene in Crazy Rich Asians, I'm like, this guy can do anything. Stick him in anything. I'm there. He's charismatic. He's funny. He's romantic. He's good looking. I bet he's got range like nobody's business. And he does, but he should not have made Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins. This is not his fault. It's just that, you know, the whole G.I. The attempt to repeatedly try to force a G.I. Joe universe on us by Paramount is fraught. And this is just not a good film. It's not well written. I mean, does it look great on 4K? I guess, you know, I mean, it's high budget and it's got, you know, CGI galore and action sequences, but it's just not a very interesting world. These are toys, and they're never going to make these G.I. Joe characters
they think they can somehow force it into being the Transformers franchise. But no, there is no such thing as a G.I. Joe franchise. They tried to make it funny the first time around with one of those Wayans brothers, you know, telling this time they tried to make it sort of serious and dark. And no, it's over. Cut it out.
I will say this, and I'm going to keep preaching this to everybody. Henry Golding should be Simon Templar. He should play the Saint. Whoever has the franchise for the Saint, cast Henry Golding. And let me explain this to you. Because we keep talking about things like, oh, James Bond. Could James Bond be a woman? Could James Bond be black? Could James Bond, well, he's been Scottish, and he'll probably be Scottish again because they're going to take that guy from Outlander. I swear the guy from Outlander is going to be the next James Bond. You heard it here. But here's the thing. Look, Simon Templar, the Saint, originally played by Roger Moore, based on the Leslie Charteris book.
Val Kilmer did that movie, but you know,
Val Kilmer did it, and they're doing it again with an American. The one freaking thing that Simon Templar cannot be is American. He has to be British. But can he be British and Asian or half Asian? Well, yes, he can. Do you know why? Because Leslie Charteris, who created Simon Templar, was half Chinese. A lot of people don't know that. Leslie Charteris' mom, Chinese. So there you go. Leslie Charteris would love the idea. Leslie Charteris sitting in heaven, maybe in hell, I don't know wherever he is. But wherever Leslie Charteris is, somewhere in the universe, if you cast Henry Golding as Simon Templar, it would make him very, very happy. So there you go.
And he needs a good one too, Henry.
He does.
You know, if not a series, certainly.
He's born to play Simon Templar, dude. You could have a franchise. You could let. Oh, he could play everything that Roger Moore did well on the TV series. Golding could do tenfold. He's 1,000 times the actor that Roger. He has more charm. He has more kind of wily instincts. Oh, so he'd be so much better. We got a couple of DC animated movies here. DC. Well, one is it. Look, I'll be honest with you. I don't know the difference in the branding, so I'm just going to say this right up. Batman Year One in a commemorative edition. Animated is a DC Universe movie on 4K. Injustice is a DC animated movie. They are very clear that these things are different. I do not understand the difference in the branding. I really don't. But they're both very good. I think, you know, Batman Year One is fine. It's, you know, it dates kind of, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't blow me away. We've done so much with Batman. It doesn't feel like this is really stretching or doing anything significantly different from what we're really accustomed to. You know, it's like, you know, Bruce Wayne has been running around not being Batman for a while, and he comes back, and everything kind of falls into place again as it did before. Catwoman shows up. There's nothing really, really novel about it, but a lot of people love this. However, Injustice is very, very interesting from a story standpoint. And here, you know, it's the Justice League is at odds with itself, and you know, Joker has this master plan to kind of screw everything up, and you know, Superman is kind of lost his mind, and it's all very melodramatic and soapy, and kind of, but I'll tell you this, it's really interesting. Everything that they do in it is exactly what was done in the graphic novel of the same name. So it brings all of these really interesting story elements together. It's quite impressive. It's very kind of alternate universe DC stuff. So that's why I can vouch for Injustice, which also has some really, really interesting special features on the Blu-ray, a thing called Adventures in Storytelling, Injustice, Crisis, and Conflict, and then some bonus cartoons. Yeah. And then last in the 4K, Tim, Maniac Cop 2 and 3. Maniac Cop, the original, has already been released. So they've decided to go 4K with the rest of the trilogy, which kind of surprises me. This is from Blue Underground. The Maniac Cop. Did we really need a 4K trilogy of Maniac Cop?
Oh, yeah, I think you do. I think you I certainly do.
Bill Lustig.
Yeah.
Bill Lustig made these films.
Larry Cohen wrote the first one anyway.
Yes, and Larry Cohen also wrote and produced the second one. But here, the thing that I find so interesting about this is that Maniac Cop 3, which was also written by Larry Cohen and produced by Larry Cohen, I'm fairly confident that this was still directed by Bill Lustig, but the direction credit is Alan Smithy.
Oh, well.
So I'm thinking that maybe the film was taken away from him and Larry Cohen went a little crazy on it. I don't know. Hard to know. I think they're all kind of the same. I don't think Maniac Cop 3 is, I don't think any of them are very good, but I don't think 3 is so much worse than 1 and 2 that someone needed to take an Alan Smith.
Well, it's an interesting thing. Yeah. IMDb, William, plus a guy named Joel Soyerson, who's going on credit, and with Larry there, and I don't know what that first movie is 88. The second one was 90. This one was 92. And you're right; they're all literally the same movie. This one, 3, had Robert Davi in it, and he sort of took it up a notch. Because Robert Davi was a good actor, particularly back in the early 90s, and a few people, stuff like that. But basically, it was all about that big face actor, Robert Dazar. With the jaw, and that was his actual face, and he passed back in 2015. And I just always thought, you know what, if you got that face, you know what, I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to play a villain, and he did it in a whole crap load of movies.
I met Robert Zadar.
Yeah? Oh.
I was a production assistant on The Legend of Wolf Mountain. The LA unit, because it's shot out of LA for the rest of it. The LA unit. I'll tell the rest of the story again someday. I'm sure I told this like 20 years ago, but man, what a wild experience that was. Anyway, Robert Zadar was one of the actors on that crazy thing. Boy, what a ridiculous, unprofessional movie.
Was it?
It really was. I mean, truly. I'll just share this. Tim, when you shoot in a movie, you need to have somebody. You need to have a script supervisor, right?
Yeah.
Keeping track for the editor so that your paperwork's in order. When you invent an LA unit to shoot stuff for no particularly good reason, and there is no script supervisor, and one of the producers is directing the LA unit to build his own reel, and the other producer basically has a little folded piece of paper from his back pocket, and he's keeping track of what you're shooting. He's doing the script supervisor thing. I'm sorry. Student films don't even.
This is not going to turn out well. This is not going to
spend $1.50. Get yourself somebody to do it right. I mean, really. Not just this scene too. Oh, gosh. Funny. Horrible.
Oh my goodness.
Let's do some new movies real quick. Man of God. Did you see Man of God with Elijah Wood?
No, I did not see Man of God. So how?
This is a Ted Bundy thing.
I might have seen that. Now that you mention it, I think I did see that because it's not really about. It's about the guy who's playing.
About the profiler.
Yeah,
Elijah Wood is the profiler. Really, really interesting. I mean, it's about the relationship specifically, and it gets into serial killer psychology and all that stuff. But very, very interesting. Elijah Wood and Luke Kirby, and Ted Bundy, the guy who was supposed to get pull the truth out of Ted Bundy. So it's a little bit of a chess match between two guys, psychology and all that stuff. Very interesting. Not like all that TV profiler stuff, which is very kind of hackneyed and forced. This is very interesting, very true to life.
Yeah, well, he was a real guy, and he was. I think he was sort of like the first FBI profiler, and it was really
very interesting.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Very interesting. We also have Spirit Quest, which is a pretty fun little comedy from Gravitas Ventures. Gravitas releases a ton of stuff. Gravitas, did they just get sold? I think they just got bought by some kind of a sports film company. If I'm not in, I'm pretty sure just like yesterday, they announced this big sale. So I think Gravitas has changed hands, but nonetheless, this is about a couple of guys who go to the desert to, do some mushrooms, and everything kind of the experience turns into a spirit quest, as per the movie. There you go. Kind of a drug. Yeah, I mean, there you go. It's a buddy movie. It's a drug trip movie. But there's a little bit of poignancy to it as well, and it still manages to be funny. So, kind of a slacker comedy like Linklater used to make, but it's not bad. Not bad at all. Spirit Quest on Blu-ray. Stillwater. Did you see Stillwater?
Yeah, I did see Stillwater.
What do you think of this?
I think that we were all meant to be talking about this movie, thinking about and talking about this movie right now as we move into awards season. But somehow it just did not seem to connect. I thought Matt Damon gave a really sort of intro. He's this Oklahoma guy who has this daughter who's in where is it, in Italy? I think in Italy.
It's based on the whole
it was Amanda.
The thing,
Amanda Bynes playing
based on that
the whole thing so loosely, and because she's accused of having committed this sort of murder, and he travels there and ends up trying to do this whole detective thing, and it's all very serious and is loosely based on that. But I tell you, there was just a whole lot of acting going on in this movie. A whole lot of performance in this movie. And I don't know, all of that just got in the way of, this loosely based on a true story sort of film. It just sort of telegraphed itself in these ways which is why I don't think we're talking about it right now.
So I think here's what I think. I think as an Oscar, a Best Picture follow up for Tom McCarthy, it's really, really hard to come out of the gate with a second one and hit a home run. So I think given that, I thought it was a very good Tom McCarthy film. I like him as a filmmaker. I think it's very much in the pocket with his body of work. I think Matt Damon's great. I think Matt Damon stands a very good chance of being Oscar nominated. It's a very rich performance. And apart from that, I absolutely loved the fact that it takes place in Marseille. In France. Man. Yes, it's Marseille as the background. And I love that because I lived in Marseille, so I felt like I was home again. I know just about every place that they shot. I'm like, you chose the right city. It's beautiful. Notre Dame de la Garde on the hill, the whole thing. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed that. But does it all come together? Probably not, I think, for the reasons you very smartly outlined. But I like the fact that there's also a featurette on here that goes to the locations in Marseille, and I really love that. So I'm going to probably watch that more than the movie. Tim, did you see Jungle Cruise?
Yeah, and it's still funny to me. I'm sorry, I mean, a lot of times we do these sort of, these movies and oh, wait a minute. You know what? I'm sorry. Jungle Cruise. That's that one with, you know what I was thinking of?
With Dwayne Johnson.
No, this is Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
This is the fake African Queen, movie, that you're talking about here.
So here's the thing. I had a very interesting experience first seeing Jungle Cruise. And first of all, let me just get into the extras here, because there are some worthwhile extras here. The making of Jungle Cruise is actually a really, really good featurette. And it's like, it's very slick and polished, and I thought it was very interesting. There are some things that it led me to appreciate that I did probably not appreciate watching the film originally. And outtakes and deleted scenes and some other behind the scenes stuff, which is all quite good. And movies anywhere code. So got this on Blu-ray and watched the extras. Fair enough. Decided to watch a little bit of the movie again. And because here was the first experience with it. I had to review it for radio and for Film Week. And we had family visiting. And Hero's little cousins were in town, and I thought, oh, Jungle Cruise, the kids all they love going to Disneyland and going on to Jungle Cruise, which is a nice family adventure. Why don't we all together watch Jungle Cruise?
Terrible.
My wife, her sister, her niece, the two little cousins, you know, like everybody. Oh, we're all going to have a great time watching Jungle Cruise, family thing. And I looked at it, and of course, you know, I saw PG-13, 4 sequences of adventure violence. And I thought, well, you know, I mean, the kids have seen, like, it can't be that bad. It's Jungle Cruise, you know, they've gone on the ride. We've seen, you know, they've seen Star Wars movies and Harry Potter movies that are PG-13. It'll be fine. And I'll be honest, like the first about hour of the movie, I was okay with it. You know, I thought there was some fun stuff. Dwayne Johnson's great. Emily Blunt is great. It's got that African Queenie thing with a little feminist bent to it. And the period recreation is fun, and all of that Geographical Society of London stuff is fun, and all that stuff. And, you know, Jesse Plemons is a great villain, and Edgar Ramirez is really good. Like, you know, everybody's kind of coming to play. And then, man, this thing just takes the gnarliest, darkest turns sideways into Pirates of the Caribbean zombie territory, where like ancient dead people, and Edgar Ramirez is sort of key to this whole thing, where the ancient dead Spaniards and Aztecs are all coming back to life again. They're reanimated by the whole Raiders of the Lost Ark thing going on, and it all just goes south at that point. And snakes are crawling out of skull eye sockets, and that's when the kids started crying. And it's like, okay, we're going to bed. And dude, my daughter would not go on the Jungle Cruise ride at Disneyland for months because of that. She didn't want to go back on the ride. We're like, but you went on it when you were 2. She's freaking out. She's like, the movie was haunting her. And all I could think was, man, Disney really
blew that.
Man, they blew that one. So upsetting.
If you're Disney, take it away. But you know what? That's the problem of not having all those units that they used to have back in the day.
I know.
Hollywood Pictures and this and that, where they could figure out where to put that. Now it's, you know, and sometimes that's not the right choice. That is not the right choice.
RESPECT.
Respect.
RESPECT. How do we feel about Jennifer Hudson winning an Oscar?
I was going to say, do you think she's going to be in the run? We're starting to get all these movies now. There are a lot of heavy duty dramas out there. Now we're coming off the heels of you know, the big biopic win of Rami Malek for Queen. The guy from Queen, Freddie. And of course we had Chadwick. So I don't know if we're at a spot where we're going to do. I feel like this is going to be one of those heavy drama years. I feel like that gal from
I feel like Spencer probably like she's going to win for playing Diana in Spencer. I feel like that's the odds-on favorite right now. She's never won an Oscar. Kristen's never won an Oscar. That's going to be redemption for Kristen Stewart. There's going to be redemption for Twilight. They'll be like, okay, you paid your dues. Now we'll give you an Oscar. Jennifer Hudson has an Oscar. However, I do think she should be in the running here, because I think this is a really, first of all, we talked about the television,
Cynthia Erivo.
Yes, where Cynthia Erivo, which is longer and a little bit more elaborate, but I feel like this captures Aretha Franklin's soul better. I feel like Jennifer Hudson, and it could be because Cynthia Erivo is not American, right? I feel like Jennifer Hudson, her life experience, her background, her family, probably she connects to Aretha more.
And literally knew her very well. You had that actual endorsement from Aretha to play her. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the mood is of the Academy with respect to all of these things this year. Last year, of course, Nomadland, this tiny little movie. So somehow I feel like this year's Academy Awards are going to be about big things. Big movies with big movie stars. And I don't know. I kind of feel like the tiny was last year, and this year it's all going to be about big things. We shall see.
We shall see. Well, in any case, I really, really do love Respect. I think I think this is a very, very good film. A really rock solid biopic. The scenes where the songs are coming together are so beautifully executed, where everybody where especially all the stuff down in Muscle Shoals, you know, and I love that they kind of tell a little bit of the story of Muscle Shoals here as well. And I think where everybody's kind of bringing the little pieces and they're changing the song a little and upping the tempo and, you know, bringing the drums a little earlier and give me a riff on the guitar and all that stuff. And then, and you see the way that Aretha was not just someone who came in and sang to what was produced. That she insisted that everything, I mean, she was kind of the orchestra conductor, and her voice was sort of the piece, the mortar that brought it all together. Very much in control of the songwriting, the recording process. Really interesting. What a life. What a great life. A little bit like, you know, what's love got to do with it, but I think this is a better film.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Very good. Very good. What else we got up here?
Let's see. Under new movies. Bestsellers.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see Bestseller? I love this movie.
Yeah, wonderful. Michael Caine and Aubrey. Just this whole sort of interesting sort of cast there at work. Michael
with Aubrey
Plaza. It's just really good.
I'm sorry that this is not on Blu-ray. I wish it were. It should be. It's not like a brilliant visual thing or anything, but it should have a Blu-ray option. I don't know if Michael Caine will get an Oscar nomination for this. I think the film will kind of fall between the cracks, but it's a lovely, lovely plot. Basically, Aubrey Plaza inherits her dad's publishing empire, and it's on the rocks. And the only way that she has to resurrect it is to go dig up this crusty old alcoholic widower who's like he's a jerk and is played by Michael Caine. And he hasn't written a book in 40, 50 years, but he still owes him one under his old contract. So, you know, you suddenly have the mismatched buddy thing. On the radio, I said, basically, it's 48 hours, except instead of, you know, a cop thing, it's a publishing thing. But, you know, Michael Caine is Eddie Murphy and Aubrey Plaza is Nick Nolte. And that's what it is. But I just think it's wonderful. I really think it's wonderful. It has a lot to say about art and artists. And I love it. I think it's a great film. Prisoners of the Ghostland, Nicolas Cage.
Look, every now and again, Nick has, and this is interesting, Nick has the Cassavetes and thing. Every now and again, Nick has one. You know, Willy's Wonderland
where they go completely.
This is not necessarily one of those. This is just, you know, this is just a movie, and yes, it's wacky and Nicolas Cage is in it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you want to go ahead and jump into this one.
This is directed by Sion Sono, the Japanese director, who's a little bit like if David Lynch were totally lacking in any self-control or artistic discipline. Sono's movies are just, they're from Mars. They're totally off the wall. I don't get them. This is like this weird kind of post-apocalyptic, mega violent thing where Nicolas Cage is, you know, he has to, I like the whole, I don't understand it. Like he's in an outfit, he's in this suit. A warlord puts him in a suit that's going to kill him.
The thing on his neck.
If he doesn't bring the guy's daughter or niece, I forget which it is, back within a certain period of time from I don't know. Anyway, the whole thing is really tedious and ultra violent and doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's got all this weird cultural fusion. But look, hey man, if you want to watch Nicolas Cage completely lose his mind, and I guess whatever. Reminiscence, Hugh Jackman. It's okay.
Lisa Joy.
Hugh Jackman's Jackman's kind of trying to do something other than Wolverine at this point, and I think he's kind of having a hard time. He plays a PI here, and I'm not sure I really buy him as a PI. I kind of feel like he's just too much of a movie star for me to buy him as Sam Spade. But that's kind of what it is, sort of a modern Sam Spade. Anyway, it's got some special features. There's
a bunch of whole sci-fi kind of stuff. They would have been better off if they had just lost all the sort of the mind and going into the mind. They lose all of that and just tell this as a straight
Look, it's sci-fi only because it deals in the world of memories and lost memories and whatnot. But otherwise, it's like Blade Runner. I'm sorry, maybe it's more like Blade Runner. But Blade Runner is a Sam Spade movie too.
But it has the sort of intention of being this sort of Inception-y sort of, like get rid of all that and just do whatever. Whatever.
Well, speaking of that, and speaking of Cynthia Erivo, Needle in a Time Stack.
Oh yeah.
What do you think?
John Ridley, directing, and he adapted the screenplay from that short story. And again, it has to. It seems like it has to do
a Robert Silverberg short story, which is a very famous sci-fi story. But
and Leslie Odom Jr. and Frida Pinto and Cynthia River, and there's this sort of idea that time can be changed. The little more, and people can do it. They're not supposed to do it. It's against the law, right? To do these things where you can create these little changes in the ripples of time and thus change all kinds of things. And people eventually sort of forget, whom they had been and their relationships and all that. And this is sort of, vying for this relationship between Leslie Odom's character and the white guy played by whoever. And he keeps changing the timeline and will they be able to hold their love together as these little time sequences keep changing. But the problem with this movie is it doesn't seem like a love story. This is all supposed to be a love story. Can this love survive? But it seems more like a story about obsession. It's not so much that he's in love with her as it is that he doesn't want the other guy to have her. And it's sort of cool and cold in that way. And I don't know. Anyways, so maybe it's a matter of interpretation, but it didn't feel the way I think it was intended to feel.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Shall we hit a few TV things? Yeah. Anything in the TV list that we should?
The Crown season 4. You tell me.
It just keeps getting better and better. This show's amazing. I think this show's phenomenal, and it'll be interesting to see how this sort of resonates. Once Spencer comes out, because we're getting inundated with with Diana stuff, but I kind of feel like as we move into the 80s and Diana and all that stuff, it's still working, man. It's just working really beautifully. It's so well done. It'll be interesting to see where they bring this thing to a close, because it's going to come right up to the present day at some point. But I think it's terrific. I think, it just keeps winning awards and people keep watching. I think it's one of the best TV shows of all time. I don't know what else to say.
The drama of the family continues. That's for sure. I mean, with the relatively recent death of Prince Philip. And the Queen doesn't get younger every day. And we know that we will be skipping Charles and going to what's his name? Not Harry, but the other guy,
William.
So a lot of this is sort of laid out but it'll be interesting to see how that all sort of plays itself out.
So we got season 1 of Walker, the new Walker Texas Ranger. I have not watched any of this. Have you watched any of this?
Yeah, Jared Padalecki got the guy out of Supernatural there. I thoroughly enjoyed him. On that. Look, the whole point of Walker, Texas Ranger, is that he is played by Chuck Norris, who, for relatively speaking, no reason, is a Texas Ranger who knows a whole lot of martial arts. And he and his partner wander around Texas, kicking ass, mostly with martial arts. Jared Padalecki does not know martial arts. He has a gun and he punches people. And I'm like, we've half of the reason why I'm watching the show it's not here. Anymore.
That's it.
No.
That's it.
No.
I agree completely. That nails it for me. Season 1 of Emily in Paris. This is absolutely kind of delightful. I just have a whole lot of fun with this. But I like Lily Collins and I like Paris. And I think this is a lot of fun. Darren Star, of course, creator of Sex and the City, did this. And I just think if you have a chance, watch it. This is really an awful lot of fun. Great special features, mostly about Paris and some deleted scenes, which aren't really worth watching. But otherwise, I stick with it. Emily in Paris, a lot of fun.
I'm a kung fu fan.
The new kung fu.
Led by a young woman, has nothing whatsoever to do in terms of narrative with that kung fu that you and I, David Carradine, all that, just nothing whatsoever to do with it. A contemporarily set show. She's more or less ends up being a sort of a detective with a few sidekicks and some love interests and her parents and brother and sister. And there's a through line of the family. But it's just a good reason to do a whole lot of wushu and some stuff that's ever so slightly mystical. At first, the mysticism of it bugged me, in the same way that it did over in Nancy Drew. The Nancy Drew show, I started watching Nancy Drew, and there was all this sort of mysticism and ghosts and things like that. I'm like, wait a minute, where are we? What are we doing here? But I decided to just sort of like, you know what? Just go with it because she's cute, and her kung fu is quite powerful. And I decided to just do that instead. So I like kung fu.
Kung Fu, complete first season. Snowpiercer, is now in its second season. The great thing about the original movie is that it came to an end because you can't drive that train around with that premise forever. I do feel like this second season, I was curious to see how many seasons do you think you can get out of people on the train? And clearly they believe that they can keep this going for a while. And they're kind of cheating it in all kinds of, interesting ways, which I won't get into. But still, they're trying to keep that drama going. It's still pretty good. Jennifer Connelly is very good in this thing. But I just don't, it feels like it's starting to stretch at the seams a little bit, I think. I don't know. Snowpiercer on TNT, second season, Blu-ray. We'll see how that goes. Legends of Tomorrow. Man, of the Arrowverse shows, this is the one that I just never really could get into. I would watch the ones with I love the crossovers. Whenever there's a crossover thing, I'll get into
this one is it's the campiest, it's the goofiest. The cast has changed 15 times.
That's the thing. I can't keep track of the characters. They keep bringing people in, pulling them out, bringing them in, pulling them out.
At the moment, they're stuck in the 1920s, but that's not this season. What season are you looking at?
This is 6. Okay. Yeah, this is season 6, and it's like there's nobody that I like. Sarah Lance is the last person here that I was really hanging on to, and now she's been abducted by aliens, and it's just the whole I don't know. I don't care about Constantine. Doesn't really work for me. Some of the people, some of these other characters, I'm like, are these really DC? Or are you just making stuff up now? Are you just bring back Hawkman and Hawkwoman? Like, I recognize them. No, I feel like it's kind of, it's too much. I have a hard time keeping track of it, but whatever, people like it.
Well, people like it. It is,
Yeah, and it feels a little bit like Quantum Leap when they start bouncing around through all these different historical figures. Like, like David Bowie shows up in this season. Really? Spartacus, I get. David Bowie? That's weird. Anyway, whatever.
You can't kill David Bowie. It'll ruin. Yeah.
Kevin Can Blank Himself, season 1. I didn't watch this, and then Annie Murphy won an Emmy, and I'm like, all right, maybe I should catch up. This is on AMC. Yeah. It's on Blu-ray, first season. I like her. I'm not sure I like the show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like it's sort of like a darker version of what would have normally been a traditional sitcom, but, I don't know. She's good. We'll see where it goes. So Kevin Can Learn Himself. Mom, Baptiste, anything here that floats your fancy before we start to wrap to a close?
Is really this fascinating show that just, ran forever. And I think our Allison Janney spent more years on this than she did on West Wing. We think of her this Chuck Lorre show. And again, it's just another insanely successful Chuck Lorre show. Chuck Lorre has probably already become the sort of like, I don't know, Irwin Winkler or whoever would have been of our period. Aaron Spelling, I suppose, would be a closer. I just been thinking about that lately, these sort of television mainstays, and Chuck Lorre is one of those guys, and he's just had all of these shows on, including this one, that have just ran for season after season after season. 2.5 Men, and it's just Chuck Lorre. It's just sort of amazing. So there it is. I think I've maybe seen 3 episodes of Mom, all total. In these, it was 2013 is when. And so what is this? Is this the final season, or what are you?
This is Mom, the 8th and final season. Yep, the 8th and final season. It is done, because a crazy long run. And then the last TV here before I get just a few other little quickies, some Criterion stuff that I want to call attention to before we close out and I dive into anime. Superman and Lois. Yeah. This is the first season. Boy, this was a really interesting. I thought, really, do you want to do this after Smallville and Lois and Clark? And haven't you kind of done this thing to death a little bit?
I have. I've been watching. Yeah, it's not bad, man. It's not bad. Look, when it first started, it started in this particular sort of way, and it had to do with Lex Luthor and this black guy, and I was like, wait a minute, are they doing that thing? But then it cleverly worked its way out of that and into the series that it became, mostly set in Smallville. With Lois and Clark and their 2 teenage sons, sort of fraternal twins, one of whom may have powers, and so on and so forth. And Lois is running around doing what she's doing, and he's playing Superman, but he's playing a distinctly different guy when he's Clark Kent. He's Superman when he's Superman, and he's Clark Kent when he's Clark Kent. Anyway, and plus it's really kind of a very well-made series. Looks fantastic. Looks way more expensive than Flash, for instance.
It does. It's like Arrowverse adjacent. And it is probably the best way to put it. But yeah, I like the idea of the domestic, moving back to Smallville, trying to raise a family, all that kind of stuff. I thought was very. It's done in a very interesting way, and I think they're going to be able to get some really interesting mileage out of this show long term. So it's an unusual DC.
It's like sort out villains. That's what they're going to have to do, is sort out villains. Who is it that Superman's going to be dealing with from season to season? Because
indeed,
that's where Flash got in trouble.
Very true, boy, especially lately. So real quickly on some classic titles and some foreign titles real fast, just to close out. I got 3 from Kino, all W.C. Fields films. The Bank Dick, It's a Gift by Norman MacLeod, and The Old Fashioned Way with W.C. Fields and Baby Leroy. Look, W.C. Fields is just amazing in all of these things. One of the all-time great vaudevillians turned movie star. Really extraordinary. I think Norman MacLeod in It's a Gift is probably the best director of any of these. But The Bank Dick is the one that most people remember. It is just, it's later. W.C. Fields from
Shep Howard's in that, man. Are you kidding me?
I know. It's from 1940. The Fields is getting older. He's just crankier in his skin. It's the one that people really kind of respond to. But these are all really great films. Definitely worth watching. You got to have them on the shelf if you're a big W.C. Fields fan. From Criterion, we have 2 really interesting ones. Ratcatcher by Lynn Ramsey, which has been out on DVD before. It's finally out on Blu-ray. It was her big 1999 coming of age debut film. Lynn Ramsey, still a very controversial filmmaker, very avant-garde-ish, but Ratcatcher is poetic and beautiful and really extraordinary and looks great on Blu-ray. A fair amount of extras here, but nothing really amazing. It's kind of a little bit thin. It's got some of her award-winning short films and a couple of interviews from 2002 and 2021. And then we also have The Incredible Shrinking Man, which is this really cool Jack Arnold film from 1957 based on Richard Matheson story that is one of the more interesting science fiction films of that particular kind of Cold War paranoia period. And it's very philosophical. Matheson is really talking about a lot of stuff going on in the zeitgeist at the time. But this is a really interesting film. I think it makes a very, very good Criterion release, and they put tons of extras on here. There's even an interview from 2016 with Richard Matheson's son, who was also
and not to mention some absolutely extraordinary sort of forced perspective photography in that film, and set pieces and stuff that still kind of plays today. You know, it's not bad at all.
Very much so. And then on the foreign language side, we've got the film Chernobyl 1986 by Danila Kozlovsky, which I think goes well with the HBO miniseries Chernobyl. This is more of a disaster film take on it than sort of an than a historical accounting from a more existential point of view. But it's very, very well done, and it is a Russian film, we should point out. So it's made in Russia and in Russian, so it avoids some of the political pitfalls, but looking at it,
but
you kind of can't entirely.
Perspective is a hell of a thing.
But from the point of view of a firefighter, kind of their 9/11 in some respects. So Chernobyl 1986. Then we've also got 3 Jean-Paul Belmondo movies. Le Magnifique by Philippe de Broca, which is probably the best of them, with Jacqueline Bisset. And Belmondo is awful. It's a little cheesy in hindsight, but it's still a lot of fun. De Broca, 1973, kind of doing what he does best. Another De Broca film called Cartouche with Belmondo and Claudia Cardinale. This is more of a swashbuckler, a period swashbuckler. Lots of fun. This is 1962, a decade earlier. This is De Broca doing his precise thing. And then Italian director Philippe Labro did The Hunter Will Get You, which is just a straight up, crime gun movie, and Belmondo being his gangstery self here. Some great commentaries on here with Howard Berger, both on Le Magnifique and The Hunter Will Get You, along with Steve Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson. Give you a really good sense of Belmondo's career. We were exposed to Belmondo when he showed up with Women Attached for his LAFTA award. That was quite amusing. And then lastly, a couple of foreign language Criterions. La Strada in a standalone version. The complete Fellini boxed set has this included. So you don't need this as a standalone if you have the box set. But if you just want La Strada, which is a beautiful, beautiful film, you can pick this up as a standalone. And then lastly, Satyajit Ray's Devi, which is one of my all-time favorite Ray films from 1960. Absolutely fantastic film. Beautiful, beautiful commentary on a whole litany of things in Indian culture, but about humanity generally. Dealing with like religious issues in India and in the culture and class issues, feudalism. It's all really just amazingly wrapped together in this film that has one of the all-time, great endings of any Ray film. I think it's just terrific. So, not really any extras on here, but, there's some interviews, but nothing, it's very thin in terms of extras, but the fact that we have, any further Ray films being released on Blu-ray is a great thing. So that's it. All right, Tim, I'm gonna pile into the anime now. Any final words before you sign off?
Let's see. What are we doing? We're starting awards season here.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. I know that you've seen what, Belfast?
Saw Belfast. That was the premiere of Belfast, which I really, really love. It's like his 400 Blows. I think it's a terrific film. I think it's really good.
So, I saw Licorice Pizza just the other night. I think we talked about it at the top of the show. So here we go. It should be interesting. I'm thinking that this is going to be a sort of fully attended. I've been needing to physically go to the theater again. So I think that speaks to something. So I imagine we're going to have but although our critics organization has not decided yet, whether or not we will be in person. for our thing.
Yeah, well, we'll sort that out. We got time. What do you hear about House of Gucci? Because I'm hearing mixed things. I was supposed to see it last night, didn't feel up to it, so I didn't go.
Same as you. I didn't go to the same one that you didn't go to, so there you go.
Yeah.
About that tomorrow. So that, and plus I've seen that trailer, and we may have talked about this in an email chain, but I'm looking at that trailer, with Lady Gaga and Adam Driver and all this kind of stuff, and they're playing these Italians, and I'm like, they're playing these Italians, and but they're playing these Italians, and as opposed to it being Mastroianni and Sophia Loren or something like that, who wouldn't be playing Italians, they would just be being Italian.
The characters.
So that was a bit of a problem for me. I'm super duper looking forward to Cyrano, because Peter Dinklage, and I'm interested in the way Joe Wright is going to sort of sort that out. And I'm also looking forward to the single Coen brothers, Macbeth with Denzel, which isn't Macbeth, but they sort of follow on from Macbeth. Looking forward to that. So those are some of the. That's one of the reasons why I say that this year is going to be a year, I think, about really, really big films with Denzel Washington and big movie stars and
Branagh spoke to a lot of that when he introduced Belfast at the premiere,
which is still a really, really big film, despite that it's a fucking movie star film.
It's Kenneth Branagh, and it's saying, I think it stands a very good chance of being the Oscar frontrunner right now because Branagh is a huge figure and is kind of due, but it's also very personal. But he was saying they want to bring people back to the theaters, and that's what Belfast is all about, because it's also inspired by his love of movies and going to the movies. It has a little kind of Cinema Paradiso subtext to it as well. It's kind of like a movie that molds Cinema Paradiso and 400 Blows and Hope and Glory all in with some kind of an Irish and one of the, like some kind of an IRA in the name of the father movie.
Yeah. It has a little bit more context because of the time than say Roma, but otherwise it's like, it's very Roma. With this particular period in it. So anyway, but that's anyway. All right, brothers. Good talking to you. Knock the rest of it out, and I'll see you soon.
Very good. And here we go into anime. All right, it's been a little while since we have tackled anime, so we have let Tim go, and I'm just going to give this spend the next few minutes just briskly going through some of the great new anime and more interesting new anime that some of you may not be aware of, as it is a very, very robust market. So let's get busy with it. As we have often talked about, anime is very, very often preoccupied with the politics of Japanese schools, and we have a season 1 collection here of one such series called Kakegurui, Kakegurui, Kakegurui. This is all about the politics of the elite people in the world, the wealthy, the prestigious people who send their kids to this particular one private school. And at night, everything goes haywire, and the kids become master gamblers and everything else. Anyway, there's nothing particularly unusual about this. It's just very much in that genre, really more for teens and young adults, I would say. It's not really kid appropriate. The next that we have is Vinland Saga. This is the complete collection of Vinland Saga. This, like the last one, is from the Sentai collection. Section 23 is the distributor. Vinland Saga is actually really, really interesting and very cool. A lot of great anime, of course, is drawn from other mythologies, other parts of the world, and this is no different. This is an anime lens on Norse mythology and kind of basically medieval Denmark and Iceland and all of the sort of Viking lore that goes on around it. It is indeed a saga. It is incredibly well animated. It's sort of you could very easily see this as a medieval Japanese saga set in medieval Japan, except in this case it's a backdrop of Vikings. Like it a lot better than the television show Vikings, I will say that. So Vinland Saga, really cool. It'd be nice if they expanded that universe a little bit. Heaven's Memo Pad is based on a manga, and this is the complete collection, also from Sentai. Not exactly my kind of thing. There are manga, and there are some kind of graphic novel versions of manga. This again has deals with a little bit of student politics. I don't want to call it school politics, but it's student politics. Focuses on wish fulfillment. We will say the teen detectives is probably a better way of putting it. Kids who want to become kind of Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys type teenagers in solving these various cases. It's, it's not exactly Nancy Drew. It's not exactly Hardy Boys. But it's fine. It works. The artwork is good. The animation is decent, but it doesn't really, blow you away. Kind of wants to imagine that it's, I guess, maybe like Junior Avengers or something, but it doesn't really rise to that level. Also an interesting manga, which was turned into anime, and we have the complete series here from Sentai as well, is Maria Holic. Maria is her first name. Holic is her last name. And this goes back probably about 15 years or so, the original manga. And once again, a high school girl. Her name is Kanako Miyamai. And she has an unusual affliction, which is that she's traumatized. Excuse me. She's traumatized by a childhood event that now causes her to be almost allergic to boys. And so that she doesn't break out in a rash when boys touch her, she goes to this all-girls school hoping that she can, have a relationship with a girl, because she can't have a relationship with a boy. They will cause her to physically react. Unfortunately for her, the girl that she falls for may actually be a boy. Those crazy anime animators and their wacky stories, right? So that's Maria Holic, complete series. It's a little weird. It kind of touches on some of the fetishistic stuff that is often a big deal in hentai. Except here, it's part of anime, and it is what it is. The Magnificent Kotobuki, the movie. This is a very well-known and well-worn property. The series originally aired in 2019, and this is a movie based on that series. It's sort of retro. It's not it doesn't take place in a particular place in time, but it definitely seems to have a World War II bent to it. And, there are World War I, or somewhere between World War I and World War II. There are planes and fighter pilots and dirigibles and various other things. And this just happens to be about a squad of young women, young women who fly fighter planes. And it's girl power, and it's creative. There's probably a little bit more to the lore that you won't necessarily get if you haven't watched the original series or read any of the original manga. But it comes loaded with some wonderful special features, and if you do like the property, you will definitely be able to appreciate the movie of it. Dusk Maiden of Amnesia, also based on a manga, as so many of them are. Again, school-oriented, the politics of school and another private school in this case. It is Seikyu Private Academy. And the twist here is that it's not exactly a normal school. It's a very unusual school. It's a very built over this shrine, and there are some supernatural things going on regarding a certain deceased figure's possible ghost, and it veers a little bit into it's kind of somewhere between Harry Potter and a Japanese ghost story, I guess. Best way to put it. If you were to filter the world of Harry Potter and the world of an educational institution and the supernatural through a prism that related to Japanese traditional ghost stories, that would basically be Dusk Maiden of Amnesia. Really, really beautifully animated. Some very, very creative visualization here, but somewhat pedestrian writing, I'm sorry to say. Hero Mask was seen, I believe, here on Netflix at one point. In any case, this takes place in London, kind of a semi-futuristic London, and deals with a particular crime unit, an imaginary crime unit. And it's kind of a noir, I guess, trying to solve rather elaborate crimes that may or may not have a supernatural dimension to them. The prisoners that they are trying to capture, these escaped prisoners, appear to have some kind of super abilities. So Hero Mask is the complete collection. It's a bit of a noir with a little touch of superpowers and superheroes, and incredibly great artwork and conceptual design. Really, really super cool. This includes some of the Japanese promos and character costume designs and a few other behind the scenes things. Very, very cool to look at. Hero Mask. And then next we have School Live. School Live is not anime, but it comes from Sentai, so it is it is anime adjacent. This goes into the Japanese schoolgirl thing and combines it with horror. And we've got two movies here. We've got School Live the movie and Gakko School Live Another Story. It's again adapted from a manga. This is a kind of it's sort of a horror. I don't know that it's that horrifying. I don't know if it's all that good, to be honest, but it definitely has a certain genre appeal. And the idea here is that it's about these girls who are all in the same school. They all kind of know each other, but they aren't necessarily friends. But they are brought together when there's a zombie outbreak, and as in all zombie stories, they have to somehow bond together and hang out and do the zombie world thing and slay zombies. So you have Japanese schoolgirls in uniform slaying zombies. Funny, not as funny as it probably should be, and it doesn't really justify a sequel. But for some reason, they made a sequel, and it's probably. It's not worse than the original. It's probably about the same. I'm going to mutilate the title of this one, but I'm going to give it my shot anyway. We've talked about this before. Chihayafuru. Chihayafuru. We've talked about this before. There have been 2 previous seasons. This is now the 3rd season of it. More or less the same as the previous. Don't bother with it if you haven't watched the others. You need some continuity here. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense if you aren't already up to speed. But if you don't know what a karuta is, for example, that's not going to mean a whole lot to you. But if you have caught up on the previous 2, just know that the 3rd season is now out and awaiting your attention. Also based on a manga is the post-apocalyptic tale 7 Seeds, which we've also talked about before. This is part 2, and very, very interesting. This is it answers some of the questions from the previous from part 1, and it actually opens up some really interesting new little new areas that new questions about. How these people were preserved, and how we're going to create these young people who've been basically engineered to help repopulate the earth after the apocalypse. Really philosophically, kind of reaches much further than you would expect it to do so. The there is, as is often the case here, a lot of lingering questions that have been part of Japanese anime and Japanese science fiction since the end of World War II. Things related to nuclear power and the use of technology and whether technology is outstripping humans, and the usual themes that are very much a part of Japanese science fiction are quite well explored here. Also superbly well animated and very disciplined writing, much more disciplined than I would normally have expected for where the first part went. Next, we have a complete collection of Gate, Gate, which is a fantasy series. Originally from about 10, 15 years ago was a manga. And it makes for pretty great anime. Really very, very clever, pulpy storytelling. Takes place in modern-day Tokyo, where an interdimensional portal brings forces into modern day Tokyo through this kind of stargate that threaten the city and potentially the world. And this is all about the kind of Independence Day type effort that is mobilized to address this excuse me, this unusual threat. And of course, it's not, it's not at all what you expect it to do. It has some really interesting twists and turns. Cagaster of an insect cage. I'll say that again. Cagaster of an insect cage. Once again, Sentai Library, based on a manga, and also a post-apocalyptic story to it, in which after the apocalypse, these people are doing kind of a Starship Troopers thing and fighting giant bugs. It's different from Starship Troopers, though, obviously, in that there's kind of an Invasion of the Body Snatchers vibe to it, almost kind of a zombie vibe to it. So it's pulpy, but it is unique on its own. It's 12 episodes on 2 discs, and really quite intelligent and very, very interesting. Good genre stuff here. So that's the complete collection of Cagaster of an Insect Cage. Kids on the Slope. Again, Sentai and based on a manga. This is from people who did Cowboy Bebop. And it's pretty cool, actually. More student politics, but not of the necessarily supernatural variety. This is all kind of a tribute to jazz, which is a thing in Japan. And these high school students who are forming relationships and basically trying to express themselves through jazz, and much of it centers around a record shop that the family of one of the characters owns. It takes a little bit getting used to. It's a little bit slow in ramping up. It's set in the 1960s, so there's a kind of a period thing going to it. The period, the 60s, and jazz don't quite fit together very well. It's not quite clear why it had to be in the 1960s. And the interviews here don't necessarily go very far in answering that. But it is nicely done and kind of more grown up than these things typically are. We've got one here from Shout and G Kids, who are doing a great deal, bringing a lot of other anime to the fore. Future Boy Conan was an early Hayao Miyazaki project. This is like, I guess, what year was this? This is it's been quite some time. I think this was at least 20 years ago that this was originally aired, but it's a lot of fun, actually. It's a very, like, as is the case with much Miyazaki. It's very sweet, and it sort of has wonderful escapist quality to it. So what's a little weird here is the thing that we get now with a lot of science fiction, where the year it takes place in is, of course, our past, but it is the future of the story when it was originally done. in any case, I think, and this may actually go as far back as the 1970s, but it's been done a lot over time, and you see the Miyazaki of today kind of taking shape. It's a little bit of post-apocalyptic in that we're in a place in 2008 where the world has been largely is sent into a tailspin, and the Earth is now kind of off of its orbital rotation. A lot of cataclysms have taken place all over the planet, and there is this boy named Conan, who is kind of a messianic figure, Joseph Campbell figure among those who are trying to survive the Earth and flee into space and be the last remnant of humanity. It is the story of Conan and how all of this transpires in his life and how he rises to his calling, the romance that he has with this young girl. And it's very thoughtful and poetic and sweet and quite lovely and very different. The Hentai Prince and the Stony Cat. The word hentai always kind of sends people a little bit sideways because hentai, of course, is the very, very adult version of anime. In this case, it's a translation. It means, in theory, it would mean the perverted prince and the cat who cannot smile. That's sort of what this would translate at, the hentai prince and the stony cat. That's kind of the literal transliteration of it. Basically, it's a school thing again about a guy who's kind of a pervert, and that doesn't mean that he's like a deviant or anything. It just means he's very shy and he doesn't manage his relationships very well. He's socially awkward and all of that. And he has let's just say that he there's something supernatural that makes itself available to him that may help him relieve all of these issues. But it is a Faustian bargain, and it becomes kind of a mythical parable at that point. Very smartly written, not all that interesting in terms of the artwork. It veers a little bit. It tries to be a little bit too hentai, so it kind of misses a chance there. But it is worth watching. Needing absolutely no introduction is Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is new on Blu-ray, 26 episodes, the complete series, courtesy of, once again, Shout and G-Kids. This is, it's no longer in the future, it's now in our past. It originally took place in 2015, and the future version of Tokyo is under attack from supernatural, possibly alien beings. It's kind of one of the better mecha genre odysseys that have come about in recent years, and it's very popular, and you really can't go wrong. So there's some very, very special edition steel books and more deluxe editions available. We were only sent the regular Blu-ray, but there's a lot of Neon Genesis Evangelion fare available this holiday season, so it's worth checking out. Getting very close to the end here, we also have Venus Wars. Venus Wars is some really, really interesting animation. They took a lot of time with it. I just wish they'd taken perhaps a little bit more time in the writing. It's kind of confusing. But it's a very successful and popular manga. So I'm sure if you know the original manga, it will probably make a lot more sense to you. It is certainly when it was created in the 1980s, I believe. It was set in the early 2000s. And deals with a cataclysm of sorts that takes place in the solar system, and some interplanetary colonization, and mainly the relationships between Earth and Venus, and which is sort of a metaphor for a number of possible conflicts between nations on Earth. But in this case, it is Earth and Venus. It looks great. But again, it's a little bit hard to follow and it moves very, very quickly. But Venus Wars is some good looking anime. Complete collection of, Say I Love You. Again, high school politics, about shy kids and awkward kids and social adjustment and so forth. There's nothing unusual here. It's just straightforward teen drama. I don't know that this is going to be that interesting to anyone who's not already steeped in the genre, but it does have some interesting artwork. Very creative and kind of different in the way that the artwork is conceived and drawn. That also goes for the next one here, which is, I think, vastly superior in anime form to its original manga inspiration, just because of how aggressively the artwork was conceived. She, the Ultimate Weapon, otherwise known as Saikano. Saikano is the Ultimate Weapon. Once again, a high school student. Shuji is a young high school student. And looking for the diaries left behind by his girlfriend. And this leads us into a rather elaborate diary narrated flashback. And it's a grand drama, a grand war-driven drama that deals with kind of a female messianic presence that is trying not to reveal any of these the twists and turns in the story here. But if you imagine, trying to think of a good analogy to this in Western science fiction. I'm not sure there really is one, but suffice to say that female messianic figures, and it's sort of mecha adjacent. It's not quite a mecha tale, but it has a touch of that. It's very nostalgic. It deals with immortality and many other concepts that are sort of endemic to this class of anime. I think it's really cool, and it's got a lot of really, really great edges to it. Never read the manga, but She, the Ultimate Weapon, just in terms of the artwork alone, is really a step above what they did in the original manga. Nothing, no big deal here. Nozo X Kimi. Didn't give this much of a consideration. I'm a little bit familiar with this. It's this again a manga, kind of a it's a little bit prurient. Guys peeking on girls' locker rooms, and it's a little bit titillating. It's like hentai, but not quite hentai. It doesn't really have any great redeeming qualities. It just means to be rather tittillating, and I'm sure the artist had a really good time with it. But it leaves much to be desired. Nozo X Kimi for those who really care. Just a few more here. Redo of Healer has some of those same problems, unfortunately. This goes in the magical direction. The idea of trying to use sexual abuse, I guess, as an entree into telling a story that ostensibly has all kinds of magical twists on destiny and fate. The Philosopher's Stone is part of this as well, which it borrows from Harry Potter and from ancient lore. But the sexual aspect of it really kind of takes it back and I think diminishes what it's trying to do, and that is quite unfortunate. We continue to have some of those similar problems in Problem Children Are Coming from Another World, Aren't They? That's one of those long, elaborate anime titles that really only exists in in this particular world. This is about 3 kids with psychic power, and they are transported to this mystical place where they engage in games that are strictly for people who have similar and comparable gifts, except that things are overseen in this particular place by these demonic figures. And even though this is not ostensibly designed to be titillating, the way it is drawn, the way the artwork is conceived, it seems to be aimed at that crowd. Also rather insubstantially written and fails to impress to any significant degree. We have season 3 of my teen romantic comedy, Snafu Climax. Won't go into this to any great degree, other than to say that this kind of has overstayed its welcome a little bit. It's really far too much of the same. And then the last 3, and we will call it quits, is Magical Girl Sight. Beautifully drawn, also somewhat lacking in the story department. This is middle school stuff, and kids with magic in middle school, supernatural qualities to it. It gets a little funky because it has all kinds of weird internet stuff involved. Like you can. Like the social media, Japanese social media brings together all those who have comparable magics. Like if, Japanese schoolgirls who formed their own sort of X-Men team through social media. It's a little far-fetched, not great, beautifully animated, but really kind of a very, very narrow audience for something like that. And then the last 2, Made in Abyss and Sunday Without God, also skew rather young. Made in Abyss has a companion role-playing game for computers and game systems, and it kind of plays a little bit like that. It's orphan wish fulfillment stuff. It's kids and adventures and Indiana Jones type adventure seeking, but it skews very young, very silly. The comedy doesn't really necessarily quite always pan out, but I think for young kids it'll be perfectly fine. And Sunday Without God was originally a what they call a light novel series, and this takes place in a kind of a fantasy world where people can no longer have children. And everyone lives forever. And it takes some very interesting philosophical turns on that premise, which is a good one. And I will not reveal any of the story aspects to it, but what it does with that premise is quite touching, and it asks some very, very salient questions that are both interesting from a religious and a philosophical standpoint. So Sunday Without God, really probably the most interesting thing of all the new anime that we have, and that is also from the Sentai library. So that is it for new anime. Go out and pick up whatever you want. It is all available online at most internet e-tailers. And with that, signing off, and we will probably see you next time for our holiday show and gift guide. So be well and hang out. I think we're almost through this thing. So just a little bit longer, and I think we'll be all back to normal pretty soon. If not by the end of the year, then certainly a little bit into 2022. See you next time.